First, a bit of context. When I was younger, from my 10-year-old to my 15-year-old age, I'm now 19 by the way, I used to live in a semi-rural area, like small cities with some fields around it. During this time, I used to have a best friend that lived in another city, but still close enough so we could visit each other's houses on our own. Indeed, there was a really long road that crossed both of our cities, and another one farther, and we both lived really close to that road. We used to see each other almost every day, but my friend Alan and I almost never texted each other, because even if I was a lot into social media and stuff, he was the kind of guy that almost never used his phone. So he ended up losing his phone in his home or at a friend's home a lot. So the only time that we really texted each other, it was to warn each other that we weren't able to meet that day. If no one sent anything in the morning or the day before, it meant that we were going to see each other later that day. If the weather wasn't good enough to stay outside, I used to go to his house. He had a lot better video games than I did. The path that I used to take to go to his house was something like 1.5 kilometers, I think. It was the only way possible, because these cities were separated by a river, so we had to pass the bridge to go from a city to another. I will describe you the path so you can imagine it. First, there are a lot of houses, and then only a few houses and a chemical factory on the other side of the road. And then nothing but trees from my side, and still the factory from the other. Then the bridge that is not a really long one because it's not a very big river. On my side, there are two paths to go on both sides of the river, where a few people used to walk or fishing. After the bridge, there is nothing but trees until the end, where there is a warehouse and the street where Alan lives. I had taken this path 1,000 times before with him or my parents, or on our own, even though there isn't a lot of people walking there. It never made me nervous to walk there, even when it started to get dark out. But as I've said earlier, this road connected 3 cities, so usually there were some vehicles driving there. One day, however, something went wrong. This story takes place when I was 13 years old. I was heading to Alan's house, as I do usually, and when I reached the area with less houses, a white van that was coming from behind me slowed down next to me with the window open. Several times before, lost drivers had asked me or my friends information on where to go, so it didn't really surprise me, and I just watched the man inside of the van. It's been years since this has happened, so I'm not really sure how he looked anymore. I just remember that he was probably in his 30s or 40s, bald with no mustache or a beard. He had a kind of creepy smile, but I didn't pay attention to that, and just waited for him to say something as I kept walking slowly. Since I was walking, he moved too, at my pace so we could talk. "Hello," he said finally. I said hello too, still waiting for a question. "Where are you going?" he asked, smiling and staring at me. I frowned because, of course, this wasn't the type of question that I was waiting for. At this point, I wasn't scared yet, just confused. I asked him why he wanted to know that, and to which he replied, "If you have nothing to do, I can take you for a ride. Would you like that?" And this started to get really weird, and I really wanted to leave because I was starting to get scared now. I chose to lie, thinking that he would leave me alone if he knows that someone was waiting for me. So I said, "Oh, I can't. I'm heading back home and my parents are waiting for me." But of course he didn't leave. He was still smiling and staring at me, driving at my pace. He just said, "No, it's okay, we can just do a small drive then." I knew at this point that this man was trying to take me, or worse, but I managed to stay calm and I didn't show him any fear. I insisted, No, but really I can't. I'm already late. I have to hurry up. But it seemed that he really wanted to do whatever he was planning to do to me, and he replied, "Oh, then I'll drive you home. I don't want you to get scolded, but for that, you have to give me a kiss." He then leaned closer to the window and formed a kiss with his mouth, waiting for me to kiss him. At this point, we were really close to the bridge, which meant that Alan's house was still a ways away. For some reason, I didn't have the idea to just run around and run for my life to my home or the factory center, so I just kept walking and refused his offer. Of course, he insisted, "Come on, just one, right here." I remember wishing that a car or someone would show up to help me, but the road was deserted this day. He insisted a few more times, and I kept saying no, getting more scared every time. Eventually, once we were crossing the bridge, an idea crossed my mind. What I didn't mention earlier is that on the second side of the river, there's a house. It's where the person that takes care of it and their family live. Usually, no vehicle is allowed to go down on the shore, so I thought he wouldn't follow me there if I went there. So I said, "No, really, I don't need you. My home is right there." And I quickly turned on the right to go home. However, that was only a half smart move, because except for the house, there was nothing but trees and water for almost 3 kilometers. So if there was no one in the house or on the shore, I would have been at his mercy. Like, what if he waited on the bridge and saw that no one would open the door? He could just go down and take me. Luckily, there was a man walking with his dog right next to the house. I ran to him and immediately crouched in front of the dog to pet him, trying to act like if he was my dad or something. Obviously, the man was confused, so I proceeded to explain the entire situation to him. But it turns out that he didn't give a crap and he walked away before I even finished. I watched him leave. He was heading to the bridge and noticed that the van wasn't there anymore. I was relieved, but didn't want to go back on the road because I was scared that he was hiding just a bit further, waiting for me. I stayed next to that house for about 2 or 3 minutes, trying to find what to do now when a white van crossed the bridge again. When I saw it, I got terrified, thinking that it was the same guy again. And this van was a really common van with no distinction, so I couldn't tell if it was really him. But they were driving really slowly. It was like they were looking for something. I froze for a few seconds and then ran for my life along the shore for a long time before jumping into the forest. I ran something like 2 kilometers, and to be honest, I didn't think I was able to run that much. When I finally arrived at Alan's house, it took me 10 minutes to catch my breath. I was shaking and totally exhausted after running for so far. I don't remember why, but instead of knocking at the door, I called him up on his phone. Guess what? That was one of the rare days in the year when he wasn't home, but he forgot to text me in the morning. I stayed by his house for about 2 hours, but I was too scared to go back home because I thought the guy was still on the road. But also, I didn't want to call my parents because I was scared that they would forbid me from going to Alan's house alone again. I eventually came back home, but instead of using the same path, I went through the forest and I walked along the shore for a long time, looking for another bridge to cross the river. My parents still don't know about what happened. I'm going to abstain from giving too much information because this stalker scares the crap out of me. Thankfully, he doesn't read English, so I hope I'll never find this post. Years ago, I moved to follow my boyfriend and to do a PhD in his country. I won't name the place, but it's an across the ocean type of deal. At first, I was very excited. It was a wonderful adventure until it wasn't. It's hard to describe the complexity of what I felt. I felt alone, misunderstood, far from my family and friends, and even though my boyfriend is wonderful, I really felt the weight of not finding any human connection. This could explain why I acted so weird and disconnected from reality in the following story. I'm also a very naive woman, and I like to see the best in people around me. This has been problematic more than a few times, but this story is maybe the worst example of where this candid attitude got me. My boyfriend and I are into a little freaky stuff when we have fun. We do it alone on our own and do not participate in events or anything. I do have an account on a known website for this type of activity. I go there to find new ideas for our sessions, and I sometimes but rarely post pictures. No face, no tattoos, and I often wear wigs. I get contacted by interested doms once in a while, even though I clearly state I'm not free. Usually they just send copy-paste messages and I ignore them. Once in a while though, I get a more personal message and make an effort to answer that I'm not interested and that I'm in a relationship already. Well, this is how my discussion with Nick started. He didn't approach me with the "will you be my sub," but with curiosity about how I got into this in the first place, stating that he was quite new to it and was interested in understanding the way of life. And so I gladly explained. Explanations turned into discussions. He told me that he was in the police and that he investigated drug cartels. He also told me that he was married and that he had kids. Interestingly, we had a lot of hobbies in common. A lot. I won't go into details about those hobbies though, but they're kind of specific. Feeling very lonely combined with the fact that I felt I could trust him because he was married and had kids, I accepted his invitation to start texting on WhatsApp. I want to be clear, my boyfriend knew about this from day one. Plus, we had been talking on this website for almost 3 months before switching to WhatsApp. He was very friendly and interested in my day-to-day life. He would share pictures of his kids and of investigations that he was working on. This went on for another 3 months. And then one day he told me that he had to interview a suspect close to the town where I lived, and asked if we could meet up for coffee. I agreed and we met for the first time. Now before anyone panics, my boyfriend was hiking with friends for a few weeks. I texted him but he didn't have any signal. Plus, we have a very trusting relationship. He has a lot of girlfriends and back in my country I hung out with a lot of boys. This isn't weird for us. And back to this first encounter. It felt as if we had known each other for years. We had a great time from the beginning and I was so happy that I had found a friend far from my country. He knew I loved reading thrillers and enjoyed murder investigation videos, so he showed me all his gear. Handcuffs, sampling kits for small investigations, other restraints, etc. It didn't feel weird at the moment, but afterwards I kind of understood that this could have been a way for him to show off what he could do. However, as the night went on, after grabbing drinks from a nearby bar, he forced me against a wall and he kissed me. I was shocked really, and barely managed to push him off of me. I told him that it was inappropriate, that he was married and that I was in a relationship. He was really sorry and he felt ashamed. He told me that he felt there was something between us and I was like, yeah, it's called a friendship. I was disappointed and we parted ways. Days later, after he apologized over and over again, he called me to meet up. He wanted to take me for a ride in his hometown and it's a pretty place. He's got a bike and he wants me to enjoy the scenery in his country that I barely know. I agree, I mean, it's his hometown. He works there and he lives there with his wife and kids. Surely I'll be safe. In short, I wasn't. Again, he kissed me, tried to push for more in the middle of a park. A park where he brought his own kids to play on the weekend. so I told him to bring me back to the bus station so that I could leave. He did, and then proceeded to tell me a story about how he had recently got a drug seller out of hiding by modifying text messages sent by his girlfriend. He basically made him believe she was cheating on him to get him to confront her and then arrested him. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's possible. Due to what had just happened, what I heard was, I can make your boyfriend believe you're cheating on him. And my boyfriend was still on his hike by that time. We did talk once every few days, and I told him everything from the moment that he hit some cell signal. Meanwhile, I was confronting Nick about that. His behavior was really strange as he went from, "I'm sorry, I think I'm in love with you," to, "If you tell the cops, who do you think they'll believe? Their colleague or an immigrant?" I got scared and tried to cool things down with him. I just felt that he could go crazy at any moment. He clearly wasn't used to girls refusing him. At that point, I thought it would be safer for me and my boyfriend to maintain contact with Nick, albeit with less enthusiasm than before. But after understanding how obsessed he was, I blocked him from all platforms where I knew he had an account. But he found me. He sent me my address asking if I loved living in that particular part of town. I never gave him my address. I guess he could pull some strings at the station to get my info. He even came to visit me at my job. I was so scared, I just played it off as if everything was okay. I told him that my boyfriend wanted me to cut ties with him because he was angry about what had happened, which was true. But I also wanted him out of my life. I didn't know how he would react if I told him, however. Nick insisted that I loved him, that I could be his mistress, that my boyfriend didn't have to know. He was obsessed by me and he didn't hide it anymore. He told me about how he wanted to screw me, how we would be a great couple, how he would father our kids. He went from "I'll be husband" material to a piece of crap in a matter of seconds. I refused again and again, blocking him, changing my accounts, etc. I got scared when I got calls from unknown numbers. I was terrified when I saw anyone slowing down on a motorcycle close to my apartment. I was wary of going outside and going to my job. The quarantine was welcomed for me, really, and I didn't get any news from him for months. And then I broke my cell phone. I knew I could transfer all my numbers from one phone to the other, but I didn't know if it would unblock previously blocked numbers. Days later, I got a message from him. He told me that he had divorced his wife and that he still loved me, that he wanted to marry me. He apologized for making me believe I was only mistress material, and that I was so much more than that. He said my boyfriend didn't love me, that I deserved better, that he was waiting for me. When he saw that I saw his message, he said, "Finally, I thought you would never unblock me." Does this mean that he had been sending this message over and over again in hopes that I would finally see it? That narcissistic man used all the manipulation tactics that he knew. He had told me before we met in person how he had learned those skills to toy with criminals, to have them tell the truth and admit to crimes. Fortunately, I had dated manipulative men before and I knew the signs. Basically, he wasn't used to not getting what he wanted. He was attractive, rich, interesting, and he knew that. I blocked him again and we moved a few months later. I just really hope he doesn't get his hand on this information. I believe Nick's last move was trying to hack into my Instagram, as I got a notification that someone from his hometown had tried to connect to my account. Luckily, since then, nothing else has happened. I really hope it stays that way.